Here's the preview of the national championship game for D1 FBS football between TCU and Georgia. And I'm going to go into all the stats that you need to know. First of all, TCU averages 41.07 points per game, while they allow 26.443. In terms of rushing yards per game, TCU averages 204.5, while they allow 152.1. Passing yards per game, TCU allows 243.21, while TCU offensively has 269.57. But I will say this about TCU. They have played a lot of teams within 10 points this year, 10 out of 14 games to be exact. Because the only games you could exclude from that is Colorado, obviously one of the worst teams in the FBS at the Power 5 level, maybe even in a Group of 5 level because of the record, potentially. Though it's pretty down there. Tarleton State, obviously. Iowa State with that horrific offense. In Oklahoma, because, Oklahoma, their quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, got concussed in that game. So, everything else has been within 10 points. That's even including the loss to Kansas State. And remember, TCU was one first down away from Baylor, and even one loss away from any of these opponents that played them close within one possession from not making a college football playoff. And the only games that were like 10 points, by the way, are like Texas Tech, West Virginia, and Kansas State the first meeting. Everything else was one possession. So, SMU is technically one possession. 42-34, touchdown and 2-point conversion. So that's just a FYI. In terms of punts, I know it's not a huge thing, but special teams do matter. As you could tell from that Ohio State versus Georgia game, they do. Jordy Sandy for TCU has 58 punts on the year for 2,327 yards, which is an average of 40.12 yards. 16 of those have landed inside the 20-yard line, while 5 of those were fit longer than 50 yards. So, out of 104 kickoffs this year for TCU, 48 of those were touchbacks. So, and in terms of field goals, TCU is 18 for 21, but the most commonly used kicker missed two of them this year. Griffin Kell, 9 for 10 on 30 to 39 yards, and 49 yards he was perfect, 7 for 7, but over 50 yards, 1 for 2, the longest 54 yards, and he did have one of those field goals was blocked, by the way. That's the only reason why. Now, in terms of tackles for loss on the year, TCU has 84. They have 30 sacks, but they allow offensively 72 tackles for loss and 24 sacks. Now, defensively, they are a ball-hawking team. They have 16 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries out of 7 forced fumbles. And they haven't blocked a kick this year. But they have allowed, their offense has allowed, 12 turnovers overall, 6 interceptions, 6 fumbles. In fact, on the fumbles, 6 of them were forced. The other team has recovered every single one. That's just to keep in mind. And passes defended, or pass breakups, 68 of those for TCU defensively. And they do have 27 quarterback hurries on the year. But the opponent has 39 pass breakups, and 30 of those in terms of quarterback hurries. Now, obviously, Georgia, they average 39.36 points per game, while they allow 14.79. a clear defensive edge. In terms of offense, yes, TCU has the edge, but when you look at the numbers, in terms of rushing yards per game, Georgia averages 201.9, while they only allow 80. That's a stout defense. In terms of passing yards, Georgia averages 293 passing yards per game, which is more than TCU, while they allow 224.57. And yes, I know they got torched in a SEC championship game against LSU, and in the playoff game even against Ohio State. But I expect them to clean up their act. I mean, I'm just telling the truth. Another stat to keep an eye on is like the third down conversions, offensively and defensively. Offensively for Georgia, 84 for 169, which is 49.7%, while the opponent is 51 for 188, which is 27.13. Fourth down conversions, Georgia is like 85.71%, which is 12 for 14. 12 for 30 for the opponent for Georgia is 40%. Now I need to do that for TCU real fast. 78 for 190 on third down for TCU offensively, which is 41.05%. While defensively, 71 for 206, which is 34.47. Now, fourth down conversions, 14 for 25 for TCU offensively, which is 56%. While the opponent, 19 for 40, which is 47.5%. So, now, in terms of punts, Georgia's Brett Horson, 35 punts on the year, which is not a lot, considering how many games they have played, for 1,572 yards, which is an average of 44.91 yards, and the longest 75 yards. 19 of those inside the 20-yard line, 9 of those were further than 50 yards. Now, Georgia has missed 5 field goals this year out of 31. 26 for 31. By the way, the most commonly used kicker is 25 for 30. 1 for 1 on 20 to 29 inside of 20 yards. 10 for 10 on 20 to 29 yards. 11 for 11 on 30 to 39 yards. 2 for 5 on 40 to 49 yards. 1 for 3 on over 50 yards, the longest 50 yards. And yes, Georgia has blocked a field goal this year. They have. So, that's just to keep an eye on this year. In fact, they overall, in terms of blocking either a punt or even a kick, they blocked 2 of those. So, they do know how to do that. They know how to block a kick and a punt. And they also have a safety on the year as well for Georgia's defense. Now, 87 tackles for loss for Georgia on defense, 31 sacks, but they allow offensively 49 tackles for loss and 9 sacks. That's a really good offensive line. Granted, I know they like to run the ball, but when they can throw with the ball, that's pretty. Run the ball and protect on passing situations, it's pretty hard to stop. Now, Georgia does have 13 interceptions on the year, 48 pass breakups, 246 quarterback hurries. Gee Louise, that's a ton. I'm not making this stuff up on that quarterback hurries, by the way. It's based on stats alone. They have 7 fumble recoveries out of 8 forced. Now, in terms of the other way around, they have 7 interceptions on the year, 36 pass breakups, 23 quarterback hurries, 10 fumbles recovered out of 9 forced. So, 17 turnovers to 20. So, in terms of the differential, TCU owns that advantage a little bit. But we'll see what happens. And I will say, Georgia is favored by 13 and a half last time I checked, but I'm going to go right ahead and check again. And I probably should mention how many close games has Georgia really played this year. At Missouri was 26-22. That's one possession game. Kentucky was 16-6, but that's 10 points or more. 10 points. Obviously, Ohio State 42-41. Okay. So yeah, there's those two games right now. Besides, like in the regular season and one in the college football playoff, obviously. So everything else, granted, the Tennessee game was 14 points, but I consider 10 points or more, 10 points or less to be closer than 14, and it is anyway. But I'm just saying, they won against Kent State by 17 points, and Tennessee by 14. So, and LSU by 20. The keys for Georgia is simple. Uh, Defensively, you can't allow Max Duggan to beat you on the ground in passing situations. You got to keep him in the pocket. Obviously, shut down the run, make him beat you through the air, but you got to contain him. Obviously, for both teams, penalties is going to be a big thing in this game, as well as play solid special teams. It's the truth, and all this. I will also say to both teams, you got to take care of the ball as best as you can. That's just applying to both. It's obvious for TCU what they need to do. Shut down the run and make Stinson Bennett beat you through the air. But I will say this. Georgia did not run the ball as good against Ohio State last game. They only had 139 rushing yards. But Georgia beat Ohio State through the air, though. So Stetson Bennett has been proven, not only just in that one game, but in other games this year, that he could step up in the game and beat teams through the air. It's the truth. Based on the passing yards per game, they can throw the ball if they have to. So, in terms of that last game, Georgia offensively had 398 passing yards. 398. Yeah. And I get that Ohio State defense has issues. But, and I honestly think this is the best defense that TCU's played against all year. I know I could say that about Michigan last game and they torched them up, but Michigan is on a different level than Georgia. Georgia's a higher level. And I know it's not like last year's defense either. I know it's not. But you got to admit, Georgia's defense is still solid as a rock. I'm just telling the truth. Obviously, if you're Georgia, don't be like Michigan last game. Beat yourself. It's the truth. And don't get down so much like Michigan did. Obviously, TCU is just going to stick around. That's what they've been known for. And they were down a couple of times during the regular season, and they came back to win games, either by 10 points or by one possession. So they've been doing that Lady Luck thing most of the year, as you could tell with 10 games within 10 points, and some of those, they were down in a few times, either during the game or majority of the game. I mean, it's the truth. Georgia currently is favored by 13, not 13.5. It first came out at 13 points there. Obviously, if you're TCU, you can't go off to a slow start. Like, it's simple. I know you've been able to overcome that most of the year in the games that you have won, with the exception to that Michigan game, because they took it to them early. Michigan had to play catch up. They couldn't keep up. I mean, at the end of the day, they allowed 51 points, and Michigan scored 45. It's that simple. That Baylor game, they could have easily lost if Baylor would have had one more first down. And I'm not saying as a Baylor fan, but if you observe the game, they were one first down away from knocking out TCU out of the college football playoff, like I said. Besides all those other games that were one possession, and even within 10 points. And even Kansas State, the only reason why they didn't win at home against TCU is because they had injuries during the game. But they got the revenge later, though. It's the truth. And I just want this game to be officiated good on both sides. I'm not talking about just one side or the other, because the rules need to be followed by both teams here. And the last thing you want is bad officiating in a huge game like this to affect the game negatively. It needs to be consistent. So, who do I think is going to win the national championship? I'm not being biased, and I'm being subjective right here. Georgia is the better team. They have the better defense than TCU, obviously. And yes, I know TCU has one loss, but you got to look how many losses they could have had, honestly, this year, or even at least one more, to be fair. But Georgia's defense is going to be better than that last game against Ohio State, first of all. Second of all, the TCU defense, I know they out physical Michigan, but the physicality level, Georgia is better. They might even have the better offensive line. They're more built for shootouts, some, because of those Stetson Bennett and what he's been able to do this year. And not only that, the stats per game and the passing. TCU just wants to play shootout. And I know TCU knows how to win close games and all. But I'm sorry, TCU. I'm going with Georgia in this game. I don't know if they're going to cover or not, but it doesn't really matter. Because a win's a win. And I give Georgia the more confidence in at this point in the year. And yes, I know TCU's overcome so much. A first-year head coach at the program. After a long time, Gary Patterson is no longer with the program. They went 5-7 last year. Now they're 13-1. But they have caught a lot of breaks this year. And I'm being serious. I'm not the only one that stated that. When you look at the individual games, you'll know why. Seriously. They had a runoff field goal at the last second against Baylor. They could have lost that. They might have not had a chance to get in that playoff. They might have not have. And not only that, look at all the individual close games that TCU's played. And to be an elite team, you don't have to play so many close games with some teams. And Georgia's clearly the better team here. It is clear. In my opinion, TCU is going to lose this game. Whether or not Georgia's going to cover, it doesn't matter, like I said, because a national title is a national title. Anyways, this is my preview and prediction video for the College Football Playoff Championship game, which will be played in Inglewood, California at SoFi Stadium. So, and the game starts at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Thank goodness it's earlier than in the past. And this is the second to last time we're going to deal with 14 college football playoff with 4 teams here. It is. I mean, after next year, they're going to have 12-team playoff. So, thank goodness for the expansion. Thank goodness. If you like this content, hit the like and subscribe button. I see you guys later. It's going to be 500 subscribers. We're on the road to it. Let's go.